there's a story today in the Sunday Times which I found rather shocking. Headline: bosses of US firm knew Grenfell cladding was unsafe and sold it anyway. So the president of the US company that made the cladding on the Grenfell Tower knew it was dangerous 2 years before that fire that horribly claimed 72 lives. This is according to newly unearthed documents. Internal emails reveal that one of the most senior executives at Arconic, which is a giant American manufacturing firm, was aware not only that it was highly flammable, was aware that it should not be put on tall buildings, but also that it had been sold for use on the residential block in West London. Now, these emails were part of a sealed cache of more than 100 documents that have come to light because of a legal action by the makers of a forthcoming Netflix documentary called Grenfell Uncovered. And it's quite extraordinary, really. The Arconic, this company, deliberately and dishonestly concealed 2005 test data that showed its cladding burnt in an extremely dangerous way. For 12 years, they misled the market with safety statements they knew to be false. To speak to me about this now, I've got Liam Spender, who is a litigation lawyer and campaigner with End Our Cladding Scandal, an organisation representing people still living with potentially flammable cladding. Good evening, Liam. Why is no one in jail for this yet?
Hello. That's an excellent question. The Metropolitan Police investigation is still ongoing, but no charges have been brought as yet.
It's been 8 years, and the investigation is still ongoing. Why, when they've gathered this kind of information, is it taking so long to achieve justice for the families that have lost people?
Well, you'd hope it's because they're putting the efforts into making sure that any prosecution that's brought is watertight. And in their defence, they said they had to wait until the inquiry report was published and the inquiry was concluded. But that happened last year, and there are still no charges.
So when are we expecting this to come to court?
Well, there's no timeline. I mean, as yet, nobody's been charged. It's still at the investigation stage, so we just don't know. But today makes for more grim reading. As you say, there's a catalogue of dishonesty. So you'd hope that this was something that did result in criminal charges.
This is obviously a very multi-layered story of greed and incompetence and dishonesty. But whether these things will land people in jail is, I suppose, the big question. What do you think is the prospect for convictions in the future?
Well, until people are charged and brought to trial, it's impossible to say. Charges are the first step. But you would hope now the inquiry's concluded, it would be something that should happen, must happen sooner rather than later.
So you are involved with this organisation, End Our Cladding Scandal. How many people are living in unsafe buildings in the UK right now, roughly?
Well, surprisingly, there's no official figure on this because the government doesn't count buildings, people living in buildings below 11 metres, but there are many thousands of buildings affected with many hundreds of thousands of people at a minimum caught in this situation.
So this is, we're talking, our main topic for this hour and the previous hour is the Middle East. And you can understand this is sort of complex, and in some ways the whole region seems as a bit of an insoluble situation. But forgive me if I'm wrong, if you're talking about a building that is clad in unsuitable materials, which might potentially go up like a tinderbox, this comes down to pounds and pence, doesn't it? This is solvable, which is what I'm trying to get across. Is it, what is going on? Are you campaigning for local authorities to take responsibility, or for leaseholders to take responsibility, freeholders? What are you actually campaigning for? Because it seems to me, why can't this be solved? Is that too simplistic of me? Is the bill too high?
No, it's a question of holding the people responsible accountable. So far, no cladding manufacturer has been required to contribute to the costs of putting these buildings right, and the responsibility should, in our view, fall on cladding manufacturers, developers, people who designed and built and clad these buildings. That's what we're campaigning for.
Has the government done anything to to force these companies which have sold cladding which turns out to be unsafe? What are they doing about it now?
Well, the government hasn't forced any cladding manufacturer to contribute. I think the previous government said there was nothing it could do because Arconic and Kingspan, two of the manufacturers of cladding and insulation, aren't based in England. So the opportunity to do anything about it, they said they couldn't. But I think the government can and should do much more than it has done to date to hold developers and cladding manufacturers and insulation manufacturers responsible.
Do you think this is a forgotten scandal, Liam?
I think it's getting there. I think if you look at the coverage of the 8th anniversary, I appreciate there's been a lot going on with the Middle East, as you say, and the crash in India. But I think the coverage has been sparse, considering we're passing another major milestone.
And presumably this is affecting thousands of people day in, day out who are living in buildings which are unsafe. They're going to bed worried about their own homes going up in flames.
Well, exactly. That's exactly the situation people are finding themselves in.
It does seem extraordinary that the government isn't using its bully pulpit more forcefully, even if these companies are based elsewhere. Thank you so much. Continue your good work on this front. Thank you. Liam Spender, litigation lawyer and campaigner with End Our Cladding Scandal, speaking after I've just marked the 8th anniversary of the Grenfell scandal, the forgotten scandal they're calling it, and we can see why. Just extraordinary story about the president of this US company, obviously with millions in her pocket in the 8 years after the scandal as well. And they just ignored it. They ignored this information that it was unsafe and that it had been applied to a tower block in West London. Just really a disgusting and shocking story.